Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Rich Kirkpatrick from the Bay Area, USA, around East San Francisco. And he is, hold on here, I wrote this down, a musician, now an amateur researcher into the creative process, and author of Mind Blown, Unlock Your Creative Genius by Bridging, I can't read my own handwriting, Bridging Science and Magic. You can find him at rkblog.com, which is dedicated to creativity, belief, and leadership. Yes, I have to read my own notes because I can't remember any of this stuff. We're going to get right back to him in 2 seconds. Would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers, viewers for video game streams, and stuff like that. Currently, 16 available works of historical dream literature. Book 16 here, The Meaning of Dreams by Horace G. Hutchinson. Dreams and Their Meanings. Jesus. There is another book I have called The Meaning of Dreams. This one is Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, originally published in 1901, now republished in 2023 by yours truly. Improved, I would hope, the definitive edition. You can find other ones out there, but I humbly assert this one is the best. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. All currently available titles on the books page, downloadable MP3 podcast versions of the show, and growing dream encyclopedia of all the people and terms I've come across in my research. That's enough about me. Let's get back to Rich. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
That's my rant. I try and keep it the same every time, all that good stuff. So fellow author there, we were talking a little bit beforehand about how you got into this, and your genre is, of course, nonfiction here in this research into creativity, which is fascinating. It's all based on our personality, our interests, our brain structure and function. But I don't know if you want to just kind of start with a broad overview of how you got into the book or what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a musician, and I've been a blogger since 2005, so that's kind of ancient.
It's a good long time.
But so yeah, it's a good run so far. Still going. But creativity, people always tell you, here's how you have a creative block. Here's what you do to get that. You take a walk or you whatever, and they often work because practitioners will share that. But I always like nerdy and curious, like what's behind that. And so I got a little nerdy when I was finishing a master's degree in leadership, because I wanted to see how things move in society, and so I did research about the creative process, and I discovered there's a whole interdisciplinary academic world of psychology, anthropology, sociology, artists, and neuroscientists in particular have learned so much, and they consistently in separate disciplines keep coming up with some similar things. And I had this little 3-step metaphor for the creative process, and I wanted to test it to see, who am I, to write anything down. Or I was teaching workshops to musicians, and so they kept asking my creative process. So anyway, so I tested this out, and got, 150 citations, threw out half of them because I couldn't, book's only 60,000 words. But what I discovered in these 3 steps is there's a dream, there's a sandbox, and there's a story. And those basically represent kind of this triangle, and which means it's not always a straight line. You have to go back and iterate in different directions, but yet you're still iteratives. There's still logic to it, and there's still a process. And so to the business person, I call it, discover, develop, and deliver your idea. There's a point where you discover it, and it comes to you in different ways. You have to prepare and all these different things to get it, the inspiration. And then there's this point where you test it. You have prototypes, and you have iterations, and how many verses of the song Hallelujah can you write, which is there's many, and then there's the story, which is where you get out to the world. It's like who am I talking to? What's the context, the language, the so forth. And so there's this idea that's there. And so in that template I found, oh gosh, of course I'm not as smart as these people. But yet my thing fits what they're saying, and I was so excited because I wanted to be proven wrong, because you have imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Like Benjamin, that's what I have sometimes. Anyway, but it was really exciting, kind of an aha moment for me at the end, like Archimedes in the bathtub. And I came up with these 2 characters too. There's a robot and a wizard, because creativity at the beginning looks different for some people. I'm kind of more the wizard, where I'm going to come with my big set of books and spells and, mysticism and dream the idea up, where the other person's a scientist, where literally they have to create a process to start their creativity. but both are creative, and the brain, as you get along the way, it works the same way. And so what I wanted to do is write something to help people like me, who are only 20% of the population, the divergent thinkers, be able to deconstruct what we do for the rest of the world, but also tell those people, here's what you're missing if you're not learning that part in your brain. So the bridge, here's the thing. It's all about the bridge. It's all about being able to go back and forth between two particular networks in your brain. And that ability to shift between those two quickly takes practice. And some people are, just like some people are taller, it's easier for them to do that. So anyway, so that's really exciting. And I learned things I didn't even put in the book, like what's a schizotype type? I mean, isn't it, I was like, really, there's this condition for creatives, who are super creative, where they can like essentially hallucinate in real time and engineer at the same time. They're like, so schizotypal mind for these super, like, Michelangelo. So anyway, so I got so excited about this and wrote a book about it. I love talking about it. I love, people who think they're not creative. I said, creativity is just another word for being human. It's what we do.
Oh, yeah.
We make things. So, so the fact that we have a discipline, multidiscipline that's studying this, humanity thrives when we are able to make things instead of blow them up. It's fun to see things blow up in a
For
movie,
sure.
but so anyway, so that's my little elevator speech about it. And, I'm still learning.
Very cool. Well, there's so many. Now we've got the dog trying to balance in my lap without sufficient leg room. Come here. He's just gonna.
What's your dog's name again?
Oh,
What's
this
his name?
is little peanut butter. I've said this before. He's the inheritance from a deceased relative. He gets to come and retire with us and have a good home. He's getting to be an old man. I don't know, 12, 13, 14, something like that. He's around there. So yeah, he's such a pretty boy. He's a lap dog. Loves his daddy. He just wants to be close to me and be warm. So that's fine.
Okay.
He's gonna go to sleep. I hope. So you gotta lay down, buddy. You gotta knock it off. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're kind of cool here and rainy, so I don't know what you're like over there. The Bay Area is hammered with these atmospheric rivers.
We got a lot of so I'm in Portland, Oregon. We got a lot of similar weather in some ways. I mean, we are basically like a lot of California or northwestern California, starting from the Bay Area up. We are in Portland, a rainforest as well. A lot of people don't kind of get that we're on the same but reversed latitude, I think, as like the Amazon, basically. So no one.
Oh, wow.
Something like that. Don't quote me on the exact numbers,
That's
but
cool.
Pretty close, like about the 45th, 46th parallel, somewhere in there. So you get a lot of weather that's very similar to like southern Amazon, the Andes Mountains type of thing. It's very similar. So people don't think of those as related.
Oh.
This is what my brain does. Like I look at comparisons, I'm like, these two things are the same. Wow. Well, no wonder we get a lot of similar things.
Well, and this is where like the robot and the wizard really are both humans. They just kind of look at opposite. They're really not.
Yeah. Well, definitely. I was
imagination.
Go ahead.
So imagination and logic. This was one thing that blew my mind when one of the neuroscientists was making a statement about your brain and how it works. Imagination is logical, she said. I said, what? So I'm like outlining, I'm like marking up her textbook. She's, Harvard researcher. And so this is really cool. She said, well, if you walk towards a cliff and you start to panic and feel fear and sweat and your stomach turns, so that's logic telling you, imagining what would happen if you, take a few more steps.
Yeah.
And so she was trying to describe your executive functions of your mind and then all of these other imagery kind of parts of your brain are really being logical. It's just not logic in a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, as you know, spreadsheets can be imagination too, depending on who your accountant is.
Definitely too. The second set of books, as they say. Well, I was doing something I don't often do and that I'm actually trying to do more. When I'm talking to someone, I'm like, I usually go spontaneously and whatever I can remember, and then I lose my train of thought and I look stupid. But I was taking notes about what you were saying and kind of how I'm processing it. So many great things. I love the triangle thing. That's a great way to understand these processes that are not, as you say, linear necessarily, or at least they're recursive. You're going to get to a certain stage and you're going to come back, and that's going to modify what you do there. And you may even get to the very end and test and implement and go, wait a minute, this isn't working. You go back to the drawing board, or you go back to the process. It's very interesting too. You get this idea of, how do we know whether something works? Well, we have to have a goal in mind. We have to define what this works means. And that allows you to implement and test methodology to get you there. And then you look at it and go, did my method produce the result I was looking for? But it all starts with the dream, as you say. And this is differentiating a wish for the future, a hope, etc., versus a spontaneous, unconscious visualization in the middle of the night, which can also be representative of your hopes and fears. All of that. Yeah,
and that's because everybody says I have an idea, or you would like something to happen or be fixed, and there's a whole like underground process on that first that dream phase that was fascinating to me. It's how you're colliding with different things, and then how it comes, incubation, preparation, incubation, and then illumination are the official academic words for that process. That then ideation, all of a sudden, you think it comes from nowhere, but like as a musician, had I not learned these scales, had I not listened to this music, had I not seen that concert, my brain would not have that in there, my reservoir.
Yeah.
And the inspiration that comes in and makes it go, boom, oh, cool idea.
Yeah. And this is a great connection between, wow, I want to say so many things all at once. This is talk about inspiration.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, we've got the robot and the wizard, and it kind of describes different methods of getting to the same result. And I think a lot of us have a yin yang balance of those both within us, one heavier than the other at different times, one heavier, larger than the other in general, baseline, like biologically or personality wise. We're going to rely on one more than the other because it works better for us. The idea of there's intuitive things where you get an idea and you feel it. This is right. Now that is insufficient because intuitions can be wrong. Fair enough. So you go to kind of logic and say, okay, let me see if I can figure out why this seems to be correct or prove it wrong. And I can tell the difference. And then you've got the more logical thing of like, let me determine something I'm trying to create. This is the wrong way to do it, but the more logical side of things is that structured thing where rather than working backwards, in a sense, you work forwards, and then you get to that thing and you go, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I think is correct based on that process. And you were talking about the logic of intuitive or that underground logical process that actually does go on with our emotions as well. It's connecting the dots between, if I continue moving forward, I will suffer injury. So your body, with the cliff analogy, says, wait a minute, I see danger, cause and effect, therefore intense emotion to move us away from the danger. I've said so many times, anxiety, worry, fear, pain, these are all your friends. They are meant to be unpleasant, to keep you alive, and it's evolutionary. We can't really get away from that. And then there's the where it goes out of proportion to the danger in the environment. You get anxiety for no reason. You feel bodily pain with no injury. These are serious concerns we try to treat. I was going somewhere with all that, but you probably have some things to say too.
Well, I'm just saying this. What fascinates me about this, and why, maybe I don't know if I'm correct, but I kind of think is this such an interdisciplinary thing that they're starting to explode in research, is that we want as humans to thrive.
Yeah.
And what keeps us from thriving are what you just described, when something gets broken and we can't, process, the fear is over, in proportion to the danger is not real. But at the same time we have to listen to it and deal with it. And so creativity is both a way to canary in the mind show, if we're not being creative, that we're missing something, perhaps we're too fearful to act on, or to come up with new ideas, or to accept change, or to be totally risk averse, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is, creativity can actually help heal us, because it will help us frame, like you described, a process. Well, I can test this idea out. And so if I apply logic to this fear, then I can actually overcome it. And one of the psychologists, a group of them that were dealing with ADHD, because hearing me, it's me. You have to confront some of these irrational things and patterns with logic and say, okay, here's what. So like I come up with these characters like Mrs. Should've. There's a voice. It's always going to say you should have done this. Well, logically saying, well, that doesn't matter if I should have done it. That won't exist anymore. I'm never going to be 15, so why am I stuck on that breakup at 15 years old?
Yeah.
I'm saying should have done this. So somehow And so creative process, that pattern of iteration back and forth of recursiveness is a way to keep our brain, I think, healthy. That's my theory. So that we are not afraid to have emotions, not afraid to feel them to their extent, but then also not afraid to test them and say,
Yeah.
I'm human. So some of them could be my benefit. I could write a breakup song, and I could process it that way. And then that could even mean something to somebody, but at least it's done. I journaled it, or I accepted my humanity. This is what people are. They're not in a box. And this is kind of my, being the divergent thinker. We're 20%, I guess some scientists say, and some others, say it's a little more, but we're the minority. Those of us who basically, like how they describe it, focused versus defocusing. So defocused person like myself, we come up with 1 point, go to 10, thousands.
I feel that.
And that's our preferred way of thinking. Only 20% of us, that's me and the corner, the teacher saying, Richie back then, why are you doodling on your desk? So anyway, so constantly.
And that's actually sometimes a compliment to the teacher. Wow, you said something. It hit my brain and I went, whoa. And then it came out in doodles sometimes. And it could be distraction on board. You're saying nothing of interest, or I've heard it all before. But it can also be like, intuitively, you're like, I'm drawing something. And that I've got a, that's coming out of me. There's a magic to, and we're going to talk about magic too, and my concept of, and why it probably aligns with yours significantly. There's a magic to inspiration that we don't understand. And this is intimately tied with creativity. There is, you mentioned Archimedes in his tub. So there's that moment before he had his eureka. There is a gap between pre-eureka Archimedes and Archimedes having the idea. We don't know what's in that gap. We don't know what closes that gap and brings the prior lack of understanding into a state of now I understand. We can only describe it, see that it happens, see the results of it. That is, the magic of that. If you think of it like the pyramid of knowledge, and then you've got a little gap, and then you've got the flame or the all-seeing eye above it, these ancient symbols. That gap, something above the peak of the pyramid, as high as humans can physically go, magic, idea, inspiration. The Greeks said the muses,
Well, one of the researchers said RESD. Oh gosh, I'm going to forget this, and I even have it in one of the chapter subheadings. This is great. But it's in the book. But there's this process that the brain goes through when they don't know how you get to that point, right? But the magic point, the boom, the aha moment. But they've tried to reverse engineer that to a point of saying this is what the chemically and they're basically, by the time a few years to go by, they might even map that out. But that still doesn't answer the question of how do you do that. It just shows. But I think it's fascinating because now people can actually, like doodling, and you understand. As my teacher did not. They were angry because they thought I was, because no one else was doodling. But I found out I can retain because I think in pictures. My brain is wired this way. So, I'm a words person, but only because I see with these pictures the side of the brain. Am I doing the right side of the brain? Whatever the side of the brain. It has more of the pictures, the language is the other side. And we emphasize so much that other part that but you need both. My whole point is you need both. You can't just be doodling.
And not paying attention. And some people need to doodle to pay attention. There's something I call percolating, like brewing a pot of coffee. If you don't have an answer, you put it in the back. You let it percolate, and eventually you got a full pot of coffee. And it's almost like a watch pot never boils type of thing, but you can't also stare at a pot and make it boil faster by the intensity of your attention. This is something you said way back in the beginning too, the idea of abstraction or distraction. And this comes from a lot of these books. Like they were trying to figure out what is the brain function. These are all philosophers and psychology people in the last 200-300 years. And they compare. So there's a dream experience where people discover a message comes to them in their dream, the discovery of a lost object. And they wake up from a dream where it says it's in the drawer. They go to the drawer and it's in the drawer, and they had no idea before they went to bed. They couldn't summon that memory from the background, but the intent, the desire to find it, they had so long story short on that, we can do that when we're awake. We often take a break from a project. We set it down. Authors very typically would say, write the book, put it in a drawer, come back to it 6 months later, read it again. You are a new person with fresh eyes now. You're going to have a different experience of it. But also the idea of, let's say you're trying to, many of these older authors and philosophers were big on their daily constitutional walks in nature, and a lot of them had some of their best ideas because now they're doing something with their body. I love doing things with my hands that let my mind float free, and all of in the middle. I'm like, wait a minute, we get this out of the way. I got an idea, and I gotta go deal with it. So I love those. I call those meditative experience. Working on a puzzle is meditative experience.
Oh, that's
going
cool.
for a walk. It often aids inspiration.
So Benjamin, this is like, the answer, I have a chapter on inspiration in the book, and basically, I call it mining for inspiration. But, it's the kind of thing you got to rest, you got to take lots of walks. Not every walk is going to be, Steve Jobs took long walks, and Stanford had this research where they proved what parts of the brain, which is a little above my pay grade to really deconstruct that part of it. But apparently there's some connections with certain like large body movements. So in the shower, you're like, your muscles are moving larger muscles, and then what happens when you do smaller muscles, when you journal or you do music, because I'm a musician, like when I play piano, there's a certain calming and meditation to it, and it just makes me go to a different place. That flow, they call it, and they actually pattern that in the brain too. So it's fascinating, but yet there's this, like you're saying, there is this abstract part of it that it's a real thing, and you can even see some chemicals or whatever do their thing in the brain, but there is this thing that is not a stuff kind of thing, as we, like this, but yet it's as real as that somehow. And they're connected though. There's not like there's a disconnect from this other realm of some kind and stuff.
Well, and this gets into the physical and the metaphysical. I mean, a lot of people today, I think, are okay. So if you go back several hundred years, people were maybe a bit too metaphysical, maybe more religiosity versus spirituality type of dichotomy. Then we hit the modern age, quote unquote, and postmodern or whatever, and we've gone to this highly material explanation for everything. And the broad assumption in the culture, kind of the zeitgeist of the humanity at the moment is, well, there is nothing beyond the physical. I don't think either extreme is beneficial. I think we are a melding of the two in this form. I mean, there's some people who believe our self, whatever that is, this thing that can say I am, is nothing but the biomechanical or biochemical process of triggering neurons in the brain that gives us this illusion of identity, or what am I trying to say? Personhood, as if we were something. And then there's the other people who say, no, we are a soul in the body, in a sense. And I think it's a combination of the two. I think of us more, and this is talk about going back to some of the mysticism and spirituality, almost occultism of the mid to late 1800s. I think of human beings as more of an antenna for the soul, in a sense. And that's a weird thing. It's like what we see in the brain on functional MRI scans and different areas that get damaged and lose function is the processes we see active at any given moment, I think, are the result of that, where the body and mind, or body and soul, meet and interact with each other. This is all very esoteric, strange kind of stuff, but that seems most likely to me. And then so there is this, and that's weird too, because people say, well, that means there's a mind-body dichotomy, and actually I'm a mind-body Unitarian in that sense. So we are our body. There is no physical distinction between the two in that sense. But there is something metaphysical intersecting dimensionally, whatever you call it, with this plane of existence that is more.
There's an experience of it that we have that's physical, because this is Well, for me, I come from Christian tradition, and the best of that tradition is that there is this incarnation where we are spiritual, like this is. So why do some people. That a lot of people I don't agree with from my tradition who, take it to basically the physical stuff is going to burn. It's only spiritual. So we could, basically drill the planet to death because a new one's going to happen. Well, the historical part, the best parts of it that I like and that I see work are the ones that say, no, we are part of all this. Mm-hmm. The tree, the planet, we're made of the same stuff. And so, the person that we say we worship basically came embedded in it, and what he made supposedly. So he's basically telling us that that's you. You are this. And so this is what's important. So, so be nice to your neighbors, be nice to yourself,
Yeah.
Clean up after yourself, don't, all those kinds of things make more sense with that, what you're talking about, the metaphysical and the physical kind of having this intersection in humanity. And, and I think a lot of folks were whatever, when you're too materialistic, you absolutely lose sense of any ethics.
Yeah.
Because then it's just stuff. Well, what if it's just stuff? Me getting this cheap shirt means there's some, teenager that is not getting paid enough. And, is that ethical? Well, I'm fine. I'm the winner. But if it's all us together, we're all physical and all somehow it's connected, then that really says, ooh, then it matters somehow. And I should be kind to my dog. I mean, of course he's wonderful. His name is Watson. But what I'm saying is like, why would you not be? Because I'm connected to my dog, even though it's a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Absolutely.
They're like family.
I think there's some people.
So anyway, so that's kind of, it's not separated. I don't think. I can't see a reality where it makes sense.
Yep. And I think a lot of that comes down to, what am I trying to say? It's a bit of a schism in Christianity and in maybe in other religions too, but I'm most familiar with that, between the idea that humans were given dominion or stewardship. And that's a very great distinction between that. Dominion is, it's mine, I can do what I damn well please with it. I own it and I can destroy it if I want to. Stewardship is like, and I think in my estimation, the correct approach, I didn't make this. It was given to me. I should treat it with respect. Yeah. And I think that's where we're coming from, is like the minute you can create an entire universe yourself with the snap of the fingers, you can do whatever you want with that. Then you're a god. Yeah. We are not gods.
But
humans did not make ourselves.
No. Yeah. And that's why in the book, everything we create is an iteration. We have respect for what came before us.
Yep.
So I don't even own what I come up with. Somebody somehow, I don't even know why, but I'm building whatever I built on something else that was around. And they call it invention versus intention. The academics are saying. So it's like looking, shipwreck, and you find this and that, and then you make something with it. And that's kind of invention. And I love the French researcher who was trying to articulate this. And so, so if you feel like you own an idea, and you trademark the word "the" or whatever, and you're happy and you have dominion. Well, then you view everything. You view your pets. You view the tree down the street. You view the air that other people have to breathe after you're dead, not mattering.
Yeah.
And you think a hierarchy of things is what's important. So I own my children. I don't own my children. I have them they're just these independent beings that somehow I get the privilege of having to take care of them now they're young adults. And certainly I don't own them now, but there's this idea of ownership. That's where slavery comes from. That's where war comes from. That's where bad corporate greed comes from. And I think, but creativity, and this is kind of why I love this whole topic, and I probably will continue studying it to some degree, is important to humanity, because we thrive when we are in that process of making something, because we have to then deconstruct what's around us. We have to be humble with ourselves to see if it works or not. And then in that, it requires collaboration. So to me, like I was saying, I think creativity is another word of saying what people do when they thrive. And so this idea that I have, like my little elevator sermon and that, and I create, therefore I am. And that's kind of the sense of being. It's not because I can just think and do it, but the fact that I'm able to make something from abstract to concrete that's useful to me and others.
For sure. And there's
beautiful too. And
there's two ideas there. One, the first one for me was that I have a perspective of invention, where it is not creation so much as discovery. I don't know that humans have, like, a bottom line, a priori assumption, humans do not have the power to create precisely as such. We cannot make manifest matter from our thoughts alone, or our intent or will alone. So what we are doing is kind of like, and I use the example, the wheel always existed. that the idea that a thing could roll, a round thing rolls, and if you put it together on an axle, you can then balance things on it and move them more easily. In my estimation, that always existed. Humans just discovered these principles and the manner of combination, which allows it to function in a manner of proper utility. Now, some will say that's semantics. Someone invented the wheel on a cart and made it real. Technically true, but like I said, humans can't manifest anything by will alone. And it's equally true, I think, to say that we can only discover what is potential, what could possibly exist. Like anything that can't exist, we can't even conceive of it. So it's maybe a definitional tautology argument, but that's how I look at things. But that also leans into my, if the world is nothing but material things, then people are just material things. If we're just biochemical machines, why does anyone matter? Why not kill someone, treat them poorly, et cetera, et cetera? It's got to be something above, superordinate to the mere physical that tells us how to treat people well. It gives us the motivation, the reason to treat people well, and then to follow through on it, and hopefully describes a bit of the manner of how we're supposed to do that. I think that's what a lot of the major religions are looking for, especially Christianity. The idea that here's a best practice user guide for what's important and how to go about doing it. And then that's the properly spiritual side versus the religiosity of dogma and inquisitions and all the.
Well, if you marry it with dominion and ownership, what you're doing is you're saying the reason we have rules of any kind, they aren't practices to help you thrive. For instance, they are basically designed to subjugate, and I think, and that's basically dehumanizing, depeopling people, and that's kind of, to me, that's the antithesis, at least of the kind of Christianity I hold to. The only way it makes sense to me is that it's for my benefit, because if there's a creator out there, he wants us to thrive. And so the things that are misunderstood and don't help us thrive may not really be the right things that people are saying. They put those as the first things, and they're harming things that obviously harm people. Like, let's just say slavery, for instance, is the easy one. Right? But some people still today will say, well, there's a case for it.
Yeah. I have a funny
corporate America is getting close to that.
I have a funny perspective on that, which is that I think we should always have people willing to advocate for it, so that it is never forgotten, so that those arguments don't get rediscovered as if they are new someday.
Ouch.
That's the worst. So that's why I'm pretty free speech absolutist. I'm like, if you ban an idea and we forget about it, someone 100 years from now is going to go, I just found this great new thing. It's called slavery. Wow. We must never, it's kind of that never forget type of thing. But before I forget this too, it's just an inspiration from earlier, the idea of, speaking of traumatic experiences like being enslaved, that's horrible. You were talking about the creative process as it results. There was two thoughts I had. One is getting it out of your head and onto paper, getting it out of your head and into words, formulating it to tell another person, writing it into a song. There's something tremendously healing about that kind of taking a trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder and expressing it in a way that almost expunges it from the body. Like, you got to let it out. You can't keep it in. And there's ways to do that through the creative process that are tremendously healing. That's a huge part of psychology in general. And then that also relates to the idea of reoccurring dreams. Like, why? So one of the components of PTSD is that you experience frequent thoughts about the trauma, involuntary flashbacks, highly sensitive emotions to similar situations that trigger extreme fear and anxiety responses. And this seems to be very similar to the process that's going on with recurring dreams. If they are recurring nightmares, it's almost like an involuntary PTSD response. Your brain goes right back to this thing you cannot stop thinking about. And so you get a series of dreams that are exactly the same because you're processing the same trauma over and over again. What I found is that talking about the dreams, the recurring nightmares specifically, getting an understanding of it. It's like, what is the body and the brain trying to do by dwelling on something? It's the same as the cliff. It's saying danger is here. And until you really understand the danger, the nature of it, see it fully, confront it, accept it, and formulate a response, until you understand what it is and decide what to do about it, your brain can't let it go. It's designed not to. So that's one of the, I want to throw that out there before we got too far into different stuff, but the idea of creativity being a healing process
Oh yeah.
very often, you know, indispensable part.
Oh, there's one research that 3 different studies took different groups of people, some were cancer patients or whatever, and had them just simply journal the trauma, physical trauma that they
Yeah.
feel, and
Oh, yeah.
and the stress they have about having cancer, and they showed that the people who were journaling, that set group, actually physically improved more than the people who weren't regularly practicing expressing, trying to make meaning out of it. That was one result. The other result, which I find fascinating, is that they, the language in their journaling went more from me to we. They felt more connected to the people around them. And so this idea of being self-actualized, being, finding yourself and seeing yourself, and is actually seeing other people too. And that goes against some of the, I've been in some really strict traditions that told you, anything psychology, it's just going to be about you. You're going to become so narcissistic and you're going to hate everybody or something. But the truth is, the more you heal and more you know your frailties, there's a lot of Christian tradition I just studied recently that talks about how that's important. Looking at your dark side and realizing I have this dark side, but I'm still valuable.
Yeah.
And the aha moment of being able to imagine that I am this lovable person, and I have these dark thoughts, and I have these things that maybe I have to overcome, and I'm a human being, and that's all okay. And that aha moment, it takes imagination. Though I have to imagine that, first I have to know who I am to be seen, and then in my spiritual life, now that I'm seen, what is the message to me? Message is that I'm loved. So, wow, then that means I can actually care for other person. So the journalers, they're journaling about their cancer. Now they're connected to cohorts who are going through it, but also their family. I think, wow, that's powerful in a way. To heal means to be able to love again, I guess, is the message there.
I think so, very much. And it is, I mean, this is so well known. I'd say that it's become a trope or a cliche, but it's cliches are a cliche for a reason, because it's just true, that you can't love others until you learn how to love yourself, because that's like the first necessary condition to get to the second one. And that means, and as Jung would say, I mean, there is no light without a shadow. So he posits the shadow self on the inside, which is all the stuff that you're not happy with or proud of, or the stuff you consider, socially inappropriate, or all the urges and drives you suppress. So he's very, very, very big working with Freud about the suppression of things, or, reaction formations and all the different lingo, denial, etc. And he says, but you can't actually get to the light without confronting the shadow. It's like you have to go through the bad stuff and see it. That gets to some other modern day thinkers who say, realize there was nothing uniquely bad or wrong about people living in Germany in the early 1900s. That could be any of us under the right conditions. And it probably would be had you grown up in that culture and experienced that moment. It's very hard to see yourself in a moment and realize how everything is going so wrong. You get very conditioned to a lot of systems working around you, and the feedback loop of reinforcement. It's like, whether we're in those times and whether we would hope we would make a different decision, those people were human, just like we are. And that means we also have the capacity to go horribly wrong. And the best way not to let it happen is to know that it is possible, and guard against it. Confront that shadow, know it, live it, in terms of not hiding it, or not ignoring it and leaving it to manipulate you from the shadow. It's a big thing. It's like that unexamined life thing. Back to Socrates, you got to know yourself, what is going on in there, and then you can have more conscious, intentional control.
This whole what you meant, that whole word dominion, power is really the enemy, because if I look at a zero sum, everything's zero sum. Had a great coffee with my son yesterday. He talked about this, about famous is not zero sum. It's just, some people are famous. They could be 5 famous people.
It's true.
And he's like, but our mind is, we start envying people because they could be famous. And if I'm not, if they are, then I'm not. So therefore I have to I'm a threat. And so this whole thing about people being a threat comes from having to own that. But if we are humble enough to say, I love America, and we've done some stuff that's, not pretty good, to say the least. That doesn't mean I don't love my country. Doesn't mean I'm not truly American, because I am,
Oh yeah.
But so some folks who would say to even suggest that, some of okay, just take it from, I have friends who are theologians, and they're saying and so wrote sermons on the back of slave receipts because he recycled paper back then, right? Jonathan Edwards was his name, and he owned lots of slaves, but yet he's look at, not everybody, but some groups say, you can never question this. Well, he was a human being, so we have to at least look at him as a human being during that time and look at his perspective of what he didn't. He had journals that said he would not preach certain things to slaves because they might get the idea that they shouldn't be slaves. I'm thinking like, well, that's dishonest. He even disagreed with, what I'm saying, because of power, because, all these different kinds of things that go on. And so, that's why I think creativity is a good, at least, hopefully bring us together as humans. For me, that's what I enjoy about it is just helping people, with business people or whatever they're doing, to understand that, think of it, but making something. You're creating this product, but think of yourself like Picasso. You might not know what the meaning is, Picasso would say about his paintings, but I'm sure there is meaning you'll get out of it. But he got the joy of making it and watching others, say, oh, look at that. You have all the story that you brought. That's a great artist. It's not forcing the meaning. I'm not forcing, because I have power. I want to propaganda, make you think like me. I am bringing out of you something that's bigger than me. And if I'm a truly, so why don't business people think more like artists is one of my things. Why don't you, look at improving humanity, look at improving yourself and thinking just like whatever it is you're making, that is adding to society, as opposed to, cutting out the competition and winning.
Taking from it. There's definitely
hoarding.
I love. Well, speaking of artists, I believe the Beatles are wizards in their own right. In that regard. I am you and you are me and we are all together. That kind of thing. And the love and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. These two guys were just selling records. But the beauty of it is you can be extremely popular and extremely rich because you're saying something so true that resonates with everyone. Wow. That's how you do it right. That's where that creativity
and not in just one point in history either, but it's something that and that's with great literature, and why Shakespeare's stories, and
still around.
Wasn't even the best writer of his day and all that, right? But it's just something captured about who we are. So if you're seen, I guess is the thing, if you can be seen and seen, that's the one reason I said it'd be great to be on the show, because I want to maybe learn to see myself a little bit better, because dreams, are very fascinating and kind of like, should I tell anybody about these dreams, or what do they mean? So I'm looking forward to hearing what you might have to say about a couple of the. I wrote down a few things, so I would at least be organized, and try to remember the images. So I don't know if that's how you're supposed to do it, or.
Well, there's hell if I know. I don't really understand what I do. When I do, I'll let you know, and I'll write a book about it. I have my method, but this is one of those things where it's like I had an intuitive process that just occurred naturally. I just talk to people, and then I started this was the intuitive thing, and then I go back and like, well, what's the logic to this? What am I doing? That's when I start describing to people the 3-step process we go through, which is also, as you were saying, recursive, and that's why I love the triangle thing. There's a lot of holy trinities out there, and the power of the magical power of threes in a way that people don't realize. It's not like the number 3 has magic necessarily, but a lot of things come in threes that you wouldn't. A minimum of 3 legs, or it's not a stool. It won't stand up. That kind of a thing. It's everywhere. And that's where you get the mysticism of Pythagoras and golden means and all this different stuff. We've tried to explain these things so many different ways. But let's do this. I can ramble for hours. Let's do your dream. So what I'm gonna do is make a note of the time here. And the basic process, you just tell me a story, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm ready when you are.
Okay. So I have 2 different dreams I put down here. One is one I had a couple days ago, but I had a repetition of this kind of setting. The other one is one I've had as a child that I just can't forget. Okay. That all of a sudden I'll remember that there is this one. Which one do you prefer to start with?
That's interesting. It is entirely common. I've found that I make an appointment with someone, they already have a dream in mind, and the night before they talk to me or 2 days before, they have another dream. And it's almost as if
Okay.
their brain says, you're about to have an opportunity to learn something.
Oh,
Talk to
okay.
this guy
So
about
that
this.
one.
That might be more, so this is the thing though, whichever one you choose. And that's not just me putting it on you saying I don't want to decide. It's like whichever one feels more meaningful to you. If you want to understand a dream from your childhood that you've never been able to shake, that feels important but you don't know why, that might be extremely beneficial. If this more recent one feels more important, it might be because there's something you're trying to consider now that's going to, you puzzle it through, it'll help you in the near to short term future,
Okay.
or you're processing some recent event that is meaningful to you. So long story short, I flip a coin. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I'll go with the one I first wrote down, which is the one that happened a couple nights ago,
Okay, good deal.
because
Yeah.
and it's been something that had some recurring kind of template, I guess, if you would,
Okay,
work situation.
good.
So
We'll figure that out. Yeah. So
okay, so here,
well, I was
tell me,
just
I'm
gonna say,
ready.
real quick before. So when it comes to recurring dreams, some people try to tell me all of them at once. Like, here's all the things that are in common. I work a
Yeah,
little backwards on that. I want to hear the formula of the most recent instance, and then we can go back
yeah.
and compare it to the other ones. So it's basically the actual narrative of the dream first. So Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Yeah.
Okay, so I find myself at a place of work, walking around. It's an office. There's cubicles, people working. It seems to be at night. The lighting is dark. That's why, and it's blue. Color is dominant. There's like this blue color. And it looks, oh, okay. That's I'm talking with people, but I don't see their face or hear the voice. But I feel some kind of excitement a little bit. Then I enter one office and I'm holding some papers in a hand, and that I think is my work or something I made. And I see a young person showing a screen that mirrors the papers I have, and he has a printout as well. And on the printout, I see these thumbnails in a little JPEG, but I can't read the name of what the JPEG is next to the photos. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool. You've like captured this somehow." And so, okay, and I continue to walk around, and then I run into the man in the corner of the office, a little passageway, who I think is a boss or my boss or like authority figure of some kind. And I was going to ask him about the hiring of a person, and he kind of interrupts, like, "Oh, let's not in public here." Cuts me off, shaking my hand very warmly and nodding with pride, saying, "We took care of that," basically, but without words. And then I feel like accomplishment and satisfaction and calm, which is odd to me, and it appears that I'm leaving and it's my last moments in the office and no one is familiar. And the office is also a new experience kind of office, but it doesn't feel like it feels calm. And I wake and remember that calm feeling and satisfaction, like, oh, it's okay, whatever this is. And that's the dream.
Hey,
At least
wonderful.
my recollection of the images.
Oh yeah, no, that's fantastic. And that is good enough. Anyone listening, that's all we need. That's it. It's just whatever your experience is. And I'll tell you this, as a guest, but also for the audience if they haven't seen it. I did about an hour long episode, hour and a half even, with a gal who her only experience of the dream, the entire dream that she remembered, was the experience of slowly falling through a void. And we talk about it
Oh,
for a long time. It's a
cool.
powerful thing. Yeah, there's a lot of experience in there to talk about. So it doesn't have to be an epic masterpiece. It doesn't have to be the most unique thing anyone has ever heard. It's all
Yeah.
personal to you. So that is step one. I shut up and listen. Step two, we go back through it again. Now I'm going to try and see it a little better through your eyes. I have the worst handwriting, and I wrote as fast as I could, and I missed things. Not your fault. That's how this goes every time. The very first. Here's the other thing too, is my concept of dreams is that it is one unbroken chain of thought from before we went to sleep all the way through the entire period of sleep until we wake up again and become conscious of our thoughts again. Like, it never stops. But what starts and stops is the awareness of it, the ability to recall. So
Mhm.
there is, and again, going back to these old books, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, the most recent release. There are people who define dreaming differently. The people who say we dream the entire night are people like me who say this is our thought process. Our thoughts never stop. Our brain keeps spinning. The electrons keep firing. Other people say, well, a dream is only what you remember when you wake up. Otherwise, it's not a dream, quote unquote, which also makes sense. Like, how are you going to tell me a dream you don't remember? A dream, the instance of a dream is what you do remember. So it's entirely likely there was some other chain of thought that started, put you here, but this is the first thing you remember, and that gives it context of, okay, here's an idea in this form, here's how it plays out. And then you got to a point where it kind of hit a resolution, and you were able to sink back down into more restful sleep, or lack of awareness of present experience, unconscious experience. Long story short on that. So I always look at, where did this thing begin? So you've set yourself in a place of work, in an office with cubicles. So there's a very kind of a corporate cubicle office space,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is its own type. So that, what am I trying to say? We start looking at different conceptions of things and how you process them. And in the broader sense, there are many types of work environments. A farmer works in the field, in the dirt, outside. An artist works in a studio, maybe a large open space with a giant canvas there. Very much not a cubicle, very much not a field of wheat. So there's many different types. So this is a very specific type of work environment that, so my question to you would be then, have you come from a history of corporate cubicle workspaces, or are you drawing on iconic representations of that to set yourself in that environment? Is that your history? You came from kind of the corporate world workspace, and now you've left it?
Well, I worked at these things they call mega church a couple times, where they was a corporate world, your office. And I actually, as a young person, I worked in a legal office, worked for the DA as a file clerk, and I was a music copyist and music librarian. So you're in an office type of setting. And I worked as a accounting clerk as a young person, with a 10 key. That's how long ago that was.
Right.
And yeah, so I had some experience with that. And then now, I'm mostly self-employed, or if I do music, I'm basically, that's a stage. Although I have had dreams of those where I'm on some kind of stage, and I've had other dreams where the context, recurring kind of context would be like a house of some kind, or a place of business. And those each have some interesting feelings with them.
Yeah.
This is the first time I ever had association with this kind of a feeling, with this kind of a setting, and kind of the sense. It's weird. So
yeah, no, for sure. So it would be very much different for you to conceptualize. What am I trying to say? The ideas that then flow, the thing that sparked the idea that got you into considering this train of thought, as it were, has something to do with conceptualizing being in a corporate environment versus other types of environments. The context is going to be different. If you had imagined yourself on a stage and there were blue lighting and there was, another person on stage with you holding papers, that would have been, maybe you're in a play. Maybe they're reading a script with you. Maybe you're rehearsing. And now we go somewhere else. This is about performance and rehearsal, but this is more about what it looks like. First blush, it seems like you're saying, okay, imagine there's the shape of the corporate world containing this idea. Like whatever I'm going to think about going forward is in that context. So we don't have to have an answer, and I'm not giving you an answer for it, but just kind of understanding why through this lens to consider this idea. And that's very interesting too, that it is at night. I mean, that is its own separate category of thing. Not many businesses in the corporate world function outside of 9 to 5. Now some do, and maybe a lot do, but that's not the iconic representation. I would say that I would guess that's probably not your typical experience. You didn't pull a 11 to 7 a.m. shift at a corporate office. It's like, that's when people go home and sleep. We come back at 6 a.m. What are you doing? So this is very much, it's like you're in this space, but you're there at the wrong time. You're out of the normal rhythm. There's something going on with that. That and the idea that nighttime is more closely, because of the way humans experience night, the darkness, the mystery, the fear of the dark, the unknown. There are a lot of broad conceptions that go with that. And nighttime is the time where things are hidden. Things are more difficult to see. Things are nighttime. It's the obscure, the shadow, even like we were talking about the shadow of the self. This may be things being done under the cover of darkness in that hidden way. So there's, it almost, I want to get your feedback on that too, like how you conceptualize night, but it's almost as if, this is the time when criminals come out to get away with shit. So how do you conceptualize night in that regard? What do you think?
I don't know if I have real negative because, you
may not. Yeah.
Be nocturnal, work through the night. Some of the jobs I had, most of the official office jobs would not be this kind of setting. They would be yellow lights, green lights, and daylight and beiges, not these grays and blacks and this blue light, and look like it's nighttime somehow. So I don't know what to think of it. It was kind of like I'm unfamiliar here, but yet it feels interesting. It's like I feel some sense of something going on.
For sure. And so part of this, and I always try and do this too, is like, am I just giving my associations? Now, of course I am. I'm giving suggestions, but I try to tease out suggestions from assertions. And so I'm gonna make that, I'll make my unconscious or barely conscious thought process plain in a way I almost never do here. So for me, my associations with nighttime would be calm, quiet. It would be away from the stress and pressure of the day. I'm not trying to get away with anything. I'm trying to get away from people and noise and activity. So it's nighttime for me rather than, I threw out a lot of associations, criminal, hidden and stuff. Well, maybe I do prefer to be hidden. Maybe I don't want anyone watching me and seeing what I do. So there's a hidden element to it. But it also may be for artists, especially, when do you put on performances? In the evening after work time? When might you be most creative? I might do my best writing from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and that's just how it is. So I'm a night owl. So there may be, is there a circadian rhythm link or a work productivity link for you with nighttime? That might be an angle to go.
I'm trying to think about that because nighttime feels, most of the time I'm doing not office stuff that I really enjoy. It would be music. I'm singing, I'm playing music, I'm in a band, all those if I just flash in my brain thinking of, those are, like you said, the stage is blue. That's the most popular lighting, because I did lighting a little bit, would be blue background or blue backlighting with some magentas, cool, some warm, slight color to make it, not so cold feeling. Very go-to lighting. That's like the go-to comfort. If you take a video, blue, what is the studio going to look like?
Yeah.
So I it felt really, and I think what you're saying about not being, like being undercover though, there's this sense of being undercover where what I was doing and like with the boss, like we knew somehow, but it was like this sense of accomplishment somehow. And it was like this, and then seeing that person, I guess, matched was like, that was an interesting thing. Just you have whatever I'm bringing to the table, somehow you've already processed it. So it felt like my work is done somehow. I was kind of felt like at the end of it, where like somehow, you know, oftentimes you always wonder when you do art stuff, like you're never done.
Yeah.
And so I do coaching sometimes with people. And so I will go to offices and I'll be a consultant. And it felt like kind of I'm this consultant where no one's really knowing exactly all the conversations I've had or that I'm doing. So it could be that the blue is relating to my experience more recently professionally, where I'm kind of in this role. People will call me for an opinion. I work with creative people in the church world, for instance, who don't feel seen.
Yeah.
And they want me to help them through that, either recovery on the way out of it or surviving when they're in it. And so that's kind of, which is why I wrote that book, because I'm trying to process all that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the idea that somehow I wasn't needed was a celebration almost, but it wasn't like, we just tell everybody you're not needed. But like, oh yeah, we don't want my name to be outspoken
Gotcha.
somehow. And I kind of have this, I always thought there's some of us who are musicians who like to be the front man and some like to be the side man.
Sure.
I really found out
some
that
of us like to sit in the
like
back and play the drums and not be seen at all. I'm just here for the music.
Yeah, and that's cool. So whatever it is, I'm the side man, so I can lead the band, but I don't have to be like the face of it. And to somehow have that creative collaboration and know that you it's like kind of, I felt like it was like this. It's like I planted a tree that somehow it's going to grow and I won't know what's going to happen with it, but my part was done.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. Like really.
That was the end of the dream kind of feeling.
Yeah, it felt like that after, because that guy and shaking my hand and just the feeling of it was just the sense of satisfaction, whereas I don't normally get a sense of satisfaction. I've been struggling to find it, when you're an author, for instance, is anyone ever going to find the book? And am I ever?
Yeah.
But it's, somehow it just felt like, okay, this is different than all of that, than what you're somehow feeling, that you are invisible in a way. You're doing covert things in a way, possibly.
Yeah. But
they're helping, and that's what you want to do.
This is a fascinating connection to consulting work. Because your job is not to come in and be the front man. I'm here to save you all. This is all me. Look at me. I'm doing this self-aggrandizingly. You're actually there behind the scenes. It's ideal that, in a sense, nobody even knows you were there. You're the power behind the throne in a way, but not in that kind of manipulating the king sense, but like the king is the front man, the business is the business, maybe the management is the management, and what you're there to do is help them do what they do better, and you don't matter. If they could get the information from someone else, it'd be the same thing. It's not about you at all. So there's something behind the scenes, covert, hidden about the nature of your work in some ways. So you go into these spaces in a behind the scenes way, not as the front man, giving information that lets the people who are there to do the work shine and take the stage and follow through on the process. I don't know if that's feeling right. But like, it's like, if you do your job well, no one knows
when you're saying that, I'm getting emotional hearing that.
Yeah.
Because that's like, it's hard to embrace what's against what most people say is success. And most people say, you got to be the name, you got to be the face, you got to be that. And so this is telling me, look what you're satisfied with. Maybe you don't have to be the name or the face. Even if you're putting a book out there and you're trying to, help people find it, it's really them. It's really, that's what's important. And some other person maybe even could be the face.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I've always
it also means, moving on too. Like, maybe there's a point now I can move on from whatever it is. This is a pivot point in life, your 50s. You grow up thinking that somehow you get older, things get more stable. It's actually the opposite. It just feels like there's more change happening, rapidly as you have less years of life. You have all these things. And I would think, this might even be deep enough to say, maybe this is how I want to end life, to feel like this is what I leave.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
For sure. And I feel
it feels profound.
Well, I thank you for that. And because ideally, if I'm on the right track, you get this emotional resonance with something I'm saying. I was like, that feels right. That feels important. That speaks to something in me that is talking back. Um, so not to make it about me, but I get where you're coming from. The idea that there's like wealth, power, and fame are kind of we're talking about, holy trinities or whatever, but we're at least, the power of three in some regard, triangular configurations. I'm not really interested in being famous. I'm doing this to make a living, but I never had any desire for my face to be on the internet and people to say, I know that guy, I'm not looking for everyone to love me. I hope they don't hate me. I hope they like what I do, but I really don't care about fame. Power, I don't want to control anyone. I do not. The only power I seek is maybe the ability to have a positive benefit to someone else. That is a kind of pass up the power of competence. I'm good at what I do. I can offer. So what's left over is, it's basically just the wealth end of things, not extreme riches. I mean, I'll take $1 million if you got it and you want to give it to me. But the idea is I want to make a living. I want to be good at what I do enough to, so I'm not really looking for these books to be my legacy and everyone remembers me in 100 years. I don't really care about that. I'm kind of making a living now. That'd be nice if they did. I think it's important planting the tree under the shade of which you will never sit. Fair enough. Maybe someone reads these someday and they get more benefit out of them. But it's not chasing wealth. It's not the greed kind of thing. It's not chasing narcissistic fame. It is very much more the limited power, not power over people, but power to affect positive change that I go for. So I'm right with you there. Like if people forget who I am, don't build a statue to me. I don't want that. That's never, no matter what I do. Please don't do that. That's the kind of thing. I think you're in a similar boat,
It's struggle because I have a lot of friends who do similar things that I'm trying to do, but I'm puzzling to them, I guess, in that way. But I'm kind of thinking what this is telling me is that just be that. Why not?
Yeah,
and embrace it.
Definitely.
This is what I feel. I feel kind of like this is a very powerful dream in that sense because it's saying that's what you want. You don't, you want others to succeed and that you had a part in it.
Yep.
And then you can move on.
So
you don't have to be holding their hand.
So I think we've actually, very early on hit something that's a very important overarching theme. So the next thing to work on in the middle of it would be why do you feel that way? And we've explored that a little bit. What does that really mean to you? And how do you go about doing it? So I think this dream might be related to identifying an ideal outcome in that, what is your dream? As we were talking about before, and then also examining your process of how it goes about and maybe how to do it better as well. Like looking at yourself in how am I executing this? And do I believe that is the right or best method? So, you're talking to people without sound and these people have no faces. It's a very interesting thing as well. How long did that portion last? Was that a brief encounter? Like you walk up to a table, you say a few things, no one has a face and you walk away, or you're going to multiple cubicles?
I'm walking around and there's, maybe there is even somebody like behind me.
Sure.
We're together, but it was not like a parent, but it's like somebody, or I'm viewing myself almost.
That happens a lot. Yeah.
But I know it's me, but so I'm, everybody seems comfortable with me being there, but it's not like there's any dialogue. And then that one thing where there's like little thumbnails and says JPEG, which I thought the only thing I could literally see was blurry thumbnail and then .jpeg, somehow there's images of something, but then I had this thing that was a messy papers that I created, and that somehow it seemed like, oh, they got it already. Oh, great. I don't have to, whatever I was going in there to do, this young person had it and was just saying, look what I have. And I was like, oh,
so this, meeting that young person that you said kind of mirrored you in a way. I want to get to that too. That was as a result of making the circuit of talking to people. Like eventually you came to him as
it was kind of, I just felt like I was just talking, and I ended up going to this corner and on a hallway, into this an actual office, unlike the rest of the office there, which is all just kind of desk and cubicle things.
Okay. So you actually proceeded to a separate area that was its own enclosed space. separate.
Yeah, it was its own door. It had to go
Gotcha.
through a door to get in that room, and the person I actually saw, I think it was a young man with dark hair, and they working this way, from and then um and all I saw was I'm showing you, here like something, and then
Gotcha.
and that's kind of how that went, and then I had all this, and it was like, oh, and then that's when I proceeded to try to just exit it, and then bumped into the person in charge, I think, because it seemed like he was the guy.
Gotcha.
But he knew me, and we had conversations apparently going on about whatever it was. That I don't know. There was no like,
For sure.
but it was something that was very comfortable that he was with me, being the guy who was in charge.
Yeah, and these are very common experiences as well. You have the experience of speaking without sound in this dream, and people having no identifiable faces, not this horrifying lack of a face type of shock.
No, it wasn't horrifying.
Yeah, no, and it was actually no reaction. It's like, but that's impossible in real life. You don't speak without sound. You can make your mouth move, but that's not how people communicate, And the idea that people would have no identifiable faces, at least, that also doesn't happen in real life. And then the idea that you would meet with someone and just know that they knew what you were thinking, that doesn't happen either. So there's this dream logic to it where knowing something is the same as seeing it visually, and because it's all imaginary. None of this is physically taking place under physical laws. You could fly and fly to the moon.
You cut me off though, like in a way, like, okay, let's not finish that word.
Yeah, and he took you to a private place. So let's get this out of the public view. Was also
well, yeah, and it all happened in one. We were standing there. It all happened there, and then that's when I would turn around to leave, and then I woke up.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so I wanted to
very interesting.
Just finish up with the idea of, so since it is different from real life, in the sense that we don't often speak without sound. It's sometimes
no,
right, or see people without faces. That could have actually happened in the dream as well. It's very vague that, well, there was a person there. And I'm like, can you describe them? I don't really know. Any facial features? I mean, they had them, but I don't know. So normally we don't pay attention to that stuff enough to have it come out as, so what the presence or absence of something specific that stands out to you is relevant to why it was shown to you in that way. So there's something about speaking without sound and something about a person not having a face. We want to look at those two ideas and tease out. If we could just go with the sound thing first, like there are nonverbal communication methods. If I'm listening to you talk, but then I start looking over here and talking to someone else, you're going to go like, he's not listening. And I didn't say I wasn't listening. Mm-hmm. I showed you I'm not listening by physically not listening, but these people were listening. There was communication happening without sound. So that's why I'm harping on that and trying to throw it out there a little bit. And then I'm just going to stop and let you think, what do you think about that? The idea of accomplishing communication without sound, or the idea of words being spoken that lack sound. There's something there. I don't know if anything just jumps into your mind.
Yeah. I don't know if I really spoke to those people I didn't see as much as I connected with them. But I knew I spoke to that person that in there and there was no words I heard between us, the young person in there, but I did see the what they were wearing, something dark, and black hair, and the back of their head, and then the boss guy, I remember seeing part of his face, smile, and dark, slick back hair, kind of like mine. He was like, unlike the other guy had, this long, like a kid, like a teenager or something, younger guy.
A little more shaggy.
Long, shaggy back hair that reached his collar. I know that was. I remember that for some reason.
Interesting.
And those they looked similar in the sense they had black hair and their skin tone. They weren't. They were dark Irish if they were Irish.
Gotcha. Sure. So fair enough. Yeah. So that's definitely there's So we could say this about the idea of communicating without sound is because it's not about the words, it's about the connection. You said connection, so there's something about it. It's like looking at the purpose of speaking to someone rather than the act of speaking. The words that are said, you're trying to connect with them. You're trying to communicate something. And the idea of, we could say the same thing about the idea of not having faces. It's like it isn't important to you who you're talking to. It's not that it is a specific person, rather that you're talking to everybody. You're trying to communicate maybe universal principles in a sense that are like, here's stuff that could benefit anyone. It doesn't, the face I'm communicating with successfully doesn't matter as much as the idea itself and the validity of it. Is that like kind of resonating with you?
Yeah, and then one thing that I wrote down was that I felt kind of sense of excitement walking.
Yeah, I
Like I
was
was
going to
like
get that too.
like yeah, which was, oh yeah, something's cool. I get something's cool right now happening.
Yeah.
Where I was feeling that, you know, which there was no, I couldn't think of anything directly. Why was I feeling that way?
Yeah, well,
But
there's a lot of reasons we'd be excited. And I would say it's very exciting when communication is successful, when someone understands you, when someone gets
mm,
you. It's like you have that moment of, someone starts saying, oh, and then I did this and then this happened. I'm like, oh, I know, me too. Oh my God, I had the exact same experience. You get it. You know what I'm feeling there. I don't know if that's the kind of sense of excitement or a different shade
yeah,
of it, anticipatory
I
excitement,
think it
or
was like, it's like I'm going to get to do something is what I felt like it was.
you were actually,
Now
it
I was
was
thinking,
more specifically an anticipatory excitement. Something's coming.
yeah, anticipating whatever
Okay.
anticipation. I constantly feel anticipation all the time
Right.
in a negative sense. So this positive sense was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah. That is looking
You know,
forward to a
I,
vacation at Disneyland. I would, it's a positive
and
sense
it's like
of
I'm going to have prime rib
anticipation.
tonight. I have reservation. That's a
Yeah.
positive.
Good.
And
Good deal.
but so that's kind of what it felt. That's why this whole thing felt different in that it was a positive thing I have not felt for a long time.
Very cool. Very cool. Maybe, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go with that. Is that you could be, broadly conceptually thinking about the successful connection, communication of universal principle in that way that's broadly beneficial. You are engaged in that process, and then that bears fruit. The idea that something's good is about to happen because I went through the proper process of successfully communicating beneficial information. That's one way to look at it. The other is that you had completed that process and something else occurred which you knew, something future oriented that was not directly connected, was coming. And once you'd completed, there may be ways to separate this out in different things. Like, so here I am in the normal course of doing what I do, going into corporate business offices, talking to all the people. Cover of night, I'm behind the scenes. It's not about me. I'm not taking the helm and becoming the new captain. And I'm doing my normal process of communicating with people, and it's kind of a faceless crowd because I talk to so many people you can't remember them all. But suddenly, a sense of excitement. Something's coming. Wait a minute. So
Hmm.
we could conceive it that way, where those are actually two separate things, or we could conceive it as it is the process itself which built to a sense of excitement. I don't know if either one of those feels right to you.
Yeah, I think either could be,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think that one of the I see windows of things that I'm able to do now that are really exciting.
Mm.
But it's going to take some time for them to play out. Is kind of the logic of it. Those who are saying, "Here's the path that you're on," and like I was saying earlier about like being author of your book, it's like it's people are looking for this book, but your job's to find it. It's not like to somehow magically make people love what you write or think that they should buy your book and magically they go from not interested to interested, but they're interested already.
Yeah.
So, and it may not be a huge group of people, but it might be. But the point is they're there, and so, and that came to me, as I was trying to process the negative emotion of everything moving slow.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe this is kind of a way of telling me to look broader, to
Yeah.
not be so myopic about what I'm feeling at the moment.
Gotcha.
Maybe that's what it's saying.
Well, you also did shift your main career focus. I mean, you said you're kind of, semi-retired now into this work from home environment. So it may have been saying, look at your past, look at what you used to do that was fulfilling in its own way, that, but you're kind of communicating with a bunch of faceless people. It's like over and over again. That gets repetitive, maybe, even if you think you're doing great work. And now there are new opportunities. You suddenly realize I'm about to hit. What am I trying to say? Something is coming that is about to be exciting. What am I trying to say? It's the idea of something. There's a change coming. There's new opportunities on the horizon that are going to fundamentally change the nature of my work. Even if this was satisfying in this form, I'm now on the cusp of something else. So that definitely seems right. I mean, especially because it's related to your real life experience, that things are coming. So then,
and what they are, I don't know what they are. Maybe I do, and I just don't not really seeing it play out.
I wouldn't consider this prophetic. I don't know how to identify or understand those kind of things, but sometimes those things are because we subconsciously, our logical subconscious puts together some pieces that we have a conscious feeling about. We can't really see those pieces however hard we look. And then actually this is a look inside this. So the next bit of the dream might actually tell you what those subconscious reasons are, those connected dots for what you think is about to happen. And whether it does or doesn't, at least this is what your subconscious says. This is my best guess. This is what it looks like to me. So what you eventually came to is, and again, we have this representation of a barrier. You've left the generic office space. Now you're in a office. This is a different experience. You've got a boundary. You've crossed the threshold into a new environment. Now it's a more private, smaller space. There's not cubicles of dozens of people. There is one younger guy at a desk, and he's before I say that, you walk in and you look and there's a desk and he's sitting there, just to make sure I see it correctly. Yeah. Okay. And he's kind of facing you with maybe a window behind him or something, or not.
No, he's facing the wall. I see his shoulder and his dark hair, his long hair. So he's like behind me. I'm behind him here. You can see like.
Okay. So he's actually facing away from you. And you can see what he's.
And then I'm looking at, and then he shows, me. Oh, here's what I'm working on, and that's stuff. And I came in there with something that was similar apparently, but he had and I was like, oh, this is great. Look what he's doing with this. And I was like.
Gotcha. Any associations with this younger person in terms of your past self, one of your kids, figures you've met, or famous people in that regard of like, or that you know of, that might fit to give context, like who this person is, why this representation of a particular person or type of person. Anything come to mind?
Well, I do talk to young people like that often because that's
once you hit a certain age,
workshop with church musicians, like, and they'll come and then consulting generally, those are the creative employees, so it seemed like he was one of those kind of persons.
Okay, you got a
generically represented. Yeah, and so it's quite, the hair wasn't like the other guy. It was just like, totally.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got just broadly the idea of a younger, perhaps more creative person, in a way like they would say fresh blood for a business. The idea of someone comes in with new enthusiasm, new ideas, and they've got this inherent potential that comes with children or youth, and they can become so many things. Once you've got the end of the road and you've aged to a certain point, you have spent your potential. Where you are now is the result of potential, not so much more to go. Iconically, it's not that older folks like you and I can't be generative and pass on information and keep being creative, but there's something unique about the almost limitless, the feeling of limitless potential with the child, that kind of a thing. Let's go on somewhere with that. So you've got this iconic, so you are meeting somewhat to you an iconic representation of a more youthful, creative energy, and you're finding that they're doing the same work. You said it mirrored your own in a way. And then
it mirrored what I was doing, and I don't know, and it kind of felt like I might have had a little part in it, but I didn't have to encumber them with what I was bringing in. That it was actually a win for me that allowed me to leave the room. And I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
there is something
if that
powerful in
makes
that. No, no, I think it does. So there's
yeah.
circumstances where you think someone would benefit from a piece of advice, and suddenly they come to you and tell you, guess what I just learned? And they give you the same piece of advice, and you're like, hey, I was going to tell you, you figured it out on your own. That's actually better. You figured it out on your own, but you don't need me. There's no needing someone. It's or someone who needs you is a very dependent situation, which there's two problems there. One is it's better that they don't for themselves, that they figure things out, that they are independent, but also it's a responsibility on the provider. Like someone's looking to you to solve their problem in a way. So you've discovered
Yeah.
this youthful energy is going to carry itself. It relieves you of a
It,
burden
and
in that sense.
it was almost like the feeling of, but also that's what I was supposed to accomplish was
Yeah,
the result of that person doing what that was, coming up and showing me that in a slightly different iteration than this thing of actual papers, but printout of it in nice forms and somehow JPEGs with pictures. So it's a mirroring, I guess.
sure.
That would make sense to me
Yeah, yeah,
of it. And like, but the
exactly.
sense was like, oh, this is my job is done in a way with this person or with this whatever the situation I'm in. That particular job, okay, I've checked off something, and so that's then I bump into the
Yeah,
authority figure person who's younger, but not as young, you know, and felt that they were like maybe bringing in more people like that guy. I don't know, and I was like, oh, somehow, oh, and he was on whatever. It was a similar kind of feeling, but more that he was taking care of something that I was asking, "Are you going to take care of?" Stop. I've already taken care of it. Isn't that great? Like,
yeah.
oh wow, you're you're free.
For sure. Yeah, and that is that freedom of being released from a burden in a way. And there's something very we talk about ideas being born or giving birth to a new project, taking creative energy and instantiating it. There's something very much like that going on with the idea of, you've come to this youth who might represent, and it's like raising kids. Your goal is not to make them dependent on you for the rest, to have power over them for the rest of your life. It's to get them to a point where they can take care of themselves. And then you feel proud of that.
Yeah.
That's the end of
Mhm.
my job. Now you're always going to be around for advice and maybe some disasters, but it's not daily caretaking and stewardship. You want to get to the point where they don't
Yeah.
need you. They don't need you anymore. There's something very much similar to that with the idea of getting a project to a point where it's self-sustaining. You've put enough effort in that now the snowball can roll on its own. Hey, I did my part and it worked. That's very satisfactory. No surprise you'd have that. But another thing just came to my mind too. This idea of you actually have like another trinity here. You've got youth, middle age, old age in a way, or elderly. It's
Mm.
the riddle of the Sphinx in that sense. The three stages of man. The potential of youth and the creativity. Well, he's gotten to a point, but now you've got the boss, and he's more middle age and more similar to you, and then you would be the elder, even if you're only a few years
Mhm.
older. Um, I don't know what that means, but we got it in there. I wanted to throw that out when I had the thought. He comes to the office to find you, or you leave the youth's office because your work is done there.
Well, yeah, I'm done with that, and I'm still like, okay. So now my next point um, is to ask this person something,
So you
and then he stops me in the middle of that.
so you go looking for the boss man.
I think it's that somehow I would hope to have that encounter. That was the desired thing. It's
Intent,
like,
yeah,
and then ends up becoming more satisfying than I anticipated. What he was telling me,
for
and
sure.
they were like at least a decade apart. One, it's like maybe a 25 and a 40-year-old, and
Yeah,
of course I'm 50 something. So it's like an interesting triad there of that. That feels like it, and it's I wonder if does this represent kind of my old career in a way? It's saying I've kind of, got that to a point where now I'm doing something different now.
yeah.
Maybe that's what this is saying, and that's what I'm excited about. That I've contributed a certain level, whatever this is. I don't know, or maybe it's a parenting thing. I think about how I'm viewing my children. Could that be it?
I think we use a
Um,
lot of those metaphors in our head. It's like the images, the icons, the symbology, hierography, however you want to say it, comes from our we think very often in associative ideas, similes, comparisons. This thing I'm thinking about is like this other thing. So then we frame the dream as, oh, let's imagine that other thing is happening in this context. And that's where we get things like, bubblegum pirates flying a cloud ship to Mars. It's like, what is that? Well, bubblegum, pirates, Mars, these all meant specific things in the context. And it's like the type of thing doing a type of behavior in a specific sort of way. And now we got a bizarre narrative that makes complete sense. But this one is also, it's very one of those basically realistic dreams. I mean, you could be in an office space, you could walk around and talk to people. There could be a kid at a desk, It's interesting that so you're engaged in the work of communicating to people satisfactorily, and it doesn't matter who you're speaking the truth for the benefit of the masses, so to speak. You go and you look for, is the next generation coming along that can take over and run on their own? It looks like he's in there doing his job. And you're like, okay, well, let me go talk to the boss. You go look for him, and you start to talk to him, and he says something like, not here, because you're where other people can see you.
Yeah, I think it was whatever this is that between you and me, that we understand. We don't have to talk about it here. We shouldn't. Yeah. Not in a real negative thing. It was a good news, but it wasn't for everyone to hear.
I did write that down too. The idea that it was not my initial impression was, is this guy being shady? Is he trying to hide something from the other people, like he's pulling a fast one? And I think you're right. Now that we've gotten to this point, it feels more like this is not information for everyone. This is more personal to us. I mean, you don't go to the bathroom by yourself because you're trying to hide anything shameful. It's like, this is not for other people to see. I'm going to undress in private or whatever. You have an intimate conversation with a partner these are words just for us. This is not for other people. There's something special about that kind of a communication that seems to be going on here. It's like, so whatever you're processing in broad strokes, you needed to know that the guy running the place understood. And he's saying, this is just between the two of us. Yeah. This is something only the two of us should discuss privately. And not only that, I get it. I'm on the same page. It's already taken care of. It's already done.
Yeah. So normally, and it was about like hiring somebody.
Yeah. That's right.
So like expanding their team and more people, where normally you would expect, okay, that situation would be opposite, where we have to let this guy go. So this is not where we talk about HR.
Yeah, that would be a little more different kind of private conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was why it was fascinating to me. Like, what? Wow. It was like, so whatever that was, it released me. Like, it made me feel satisfied. It started with excitement, anticipation. And then after that was like satisfaction. Well, I said, boy, I feel great this morning.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's, there's something very special, important about the idea of, you're going to him to ensure new people are brought in, that the company itself, that whatever business they're engaged in is going to expand, it's going to grow on its own. And so there's a bunch of different things. You've come in to share your wisdom with the people. You've checked to see that the incoming or a current crop of young talent is up to the task and appears to be doing well. Hey, they don't need you. You go to the boss. Is this going to grow on its own? Am I really done here? Do I need to stay involved to add my energy to make it grow? And he's like, you did everything you need to. You're released, as you say. It's this sense of completion with the whole process, that I've done a thing that is now self-contained. Bookend it with, it's going to grow on its own and continue.
And that person seemed happy with me too. So I felt like, oh, I'm affirmed too. This is like, not I'm shutting you up because we can't talk about it, but hey, this is great. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's like the handshake was like, yeah. And that was kind of interesting because, I've had opposite experiences. I've had dreams where I was actually talking enough in the dream that it woke my wife up. I was actually talking.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Little, the channel you first arrive in my Discord is called somniloquy, sleep talking. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So like I would do that, and I have a lot of dreams where no one's hearing me, but I'm actually talking. and then I know what I'm saying. Sometimes I wake up thinking, and I've even dreamed words. You know, I
Yeah.
had this terrible conspiracy against me in a work situation, and I had a caveat come up, and then the word warning came up as I woke up.
Yeah.
And then ended
Very
up
cool.
finding out there was a conspiracy going on. I was like, really? Would never
Wow.
have imagined, but I knew somehow. You know, you see signs of things, and so this dream is interesting because I have seen faces and I have talked out loud. The fact that I didn't really need to, and I was heard and
Yeah.
accomplished was like, wow, that was new. This is almost different than a lot of dreams I've had before.
This seems like very much a celebration of successfully finishing a chapter in a sense and being able to put it behind you as that's a win it's a check mark in the win column in the book. I go on to other wins. And sometimes it's just very nice. What is it? It's a very nice experience to just have a positive dream, period. Like I wish no one ever had
There
nightmares.
usually aren't.
Yeah, I wish no one ever had nightmares, but those tend to be more common in terms of dreams we remember, more intensely emotional, we're more focused on remembering those things because it's important to finish processing it when we're awake. But this one is it's like the fear motivator or wish driver that would spur this line of thought might be, let me just review where I'm at and make sure I really can move on. Have I really finished my work? And your conclusion at the end of it seems to be, I think I did. I think I did everything I could and it worked. And there really is nothing more to do. I'm not leaving. I'm not abandoning a project. The project's done. And so you're giving yourself permission to feel good about it and celebrate for a minute and start something new. I think that's
And I have abandonment issues, by the way. So it's really this is really, it's such an inverse to have this in a dream, because usually dreams is processing the trauma of
sure.
not knowing a birth father and not just different things throughout life that you experience.
For sure.
Well,
That's
like
that's a very good and powerful thing too, because a lot of us, what is it? They're like human nature to say, I'm not going to repeat the mistakes of my parents. And then sometimes we do because we can't help the patterns. But there's also, let's say specifically with abandonment, this will make you hypersensitive to perceived abandonment by other people. It will also make you very self-critical. Am I abandoning people improperly and refusing to do that? So you would want a second look at leaving. Am I doing it for the right reason? Am I doing it after success rather than quitting? There's two very different things. The job is done or it's not done. Leaving takes on very different connotations. So not surprising you would want to, in a sense, comfort yourself and say, you're doing the right thing. It's okay to go. You've succeeded. Pat yourself on the back. Let it be a success.
I've had jobs I've left where there was, this is great. But then it also has been once I tried to stay longer than I know I wanted to or should have.
Yeah.
For this very reason. This is interesting. And so this dream in a way is kind of different. It's like a different level of that. Look at the kitty.
Yeah. This is my baby.
Who's that?
Her name's Baby. She was named by our niece.
Hey, Baby.
When our niece was 3 years old. She loved Justin Bieber. She's gonna kill me. Sorry, no one knows who she is. But Justin Bieber's song "Baby, Baby Oh," and so she took one look at this cat and said, "Oh, Baby," and that's been her name ever since. So, and the other one, Princess, she also named Princess. So, but I think we have come to the end of the thing. Unless you have more questions, I don't think I have more to share. It's up to you.
Well, thank you. This has been very enlightening.
Good deal. I love successfully solving the mystery, and the measure of success is: does it make sense to you? Does it feel meaningful to you? Does it align with your experience in your life? This is the kind of power I want. And there was absolutely no use of force, no compulsion, no pressure, coercion. There was no control over you. There's no real power beyond, here's something I can offer legitimately, and it had a positive benefit. That's now I'm gonna cry. That's like I'm getting verklempt. Talk amongst yourselves.
Verklempt. Thank you. And I think the dreams, it just I used to journal more of them, but this is good. This is good. So I'm sure you're going to have some other guests come up. They're going to have not so positive a dream, but
it happens.
I hope someone else does.
I like those too. I'll take them all. I'll take all kinds. And hopefully, even with a bad dream, I got to put you down, baby. I need my papers. You can't sit on those. Hopefully even the folks who have bad dreams, after talking to me, it gets a little better. They can understand it. They can put it to rest. They don't have to keep re-experiencing that trauma. Okay, well, we'll just put a pin in it here and wrap up. She's coming right back. You got, okay. We're going to say amidst giving snuggles to the kitty. Once again, this has been our friend Rich Kirkpatrick out of the Bay Area, USA. He is a musician, researcher into the creative process, author of Mind Blown, Unlock Your Creative Genius by Bridging Science and Magic, what I hope I'm doing here. You can find him at rkblog.com, link in the description below, for more about creativity, belief, and leadership. And I'm just going to say, for my part, if you would, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. 16 currently available works of historical dream literature, literature, the most recent Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, book 16 of the ABC series. All this and more at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. And the last thing to say is just, Rich, thank you for the conversation.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you.
And everybody out there, thanks for listening.